Welcome to Money Hangout once again. Every week we talk to you about one important question that you may have. We try and figure out what most of our readers are asking based on the questions that we get, and we get such questions in large number. So today we are going to talk something very significant. That is something which is everybody's top of mind. This is brought to you by Birla Sun Life and Value Research. The key thing which we are going to talk about, we have been working on this question for a while. We wanted to give you some technical answer, and the key question is that all that you didn't know about SIPs. How do SIPs work over a very long period of time? Because evaluating SIP performance today, it is possible to actually validate how SIPs have done in any fund over the last 25 years, ever since they have been available. They have been available for a while now. We had, and so what we did was, today SIP has gained popularity, but theoretically and technically it was possible to start your SIPs nearly 25 years ago. Not too many funds were available then, but at least doing the simulation on quite a few funds was possible. So over this 25-year, all the possible funds, we did a comprehensive exercise. We did an estimation of, we did a SIP in each and every fund over the last 25 years for variety of time period, for 1 year to 10-year time period in each and every fund. We did this simulation. This way we came across, a very large data point. This translated into, possible combinations and possible combination of different funds, different time period. So, and we generated a return. We calculated the return on the SIP made in such funds over different time period. This turned out to be, number crunching on 3.67 lakh individual investment account. What would have been the performance if somebody was doing a SIP on a continuous basis for any period between 1 to 10 years and separate periods, and excuse me, and that too for that too on a continuous basis. So doing that rolling evaluation on 1 to 10-year period on these 3.67 lakh points, the return, the thing that we came across was quite startling. But more importantly, I will tell you that why we did this exercise in the first place. Everybody knows that SIP works, and everybody does a small illustration that how it did in a rising market, how it did in a falling market, and how it did in a market which was not going anywhere. And I don't think that is a really useful way of evaluating this. Not that the outcome or the finding that we have come across as a result of this massive exercise is any different. Of course, it just validates a certain viewpoint, but we will get into the outcomes or the findings of that study in a while. The key point is that just looking at a narrow time frame and seeing what the performance of your SIP is quite straightforward. Markets rise fairly steadily. They never rise in a hurry, or the rise is always gradual. We have long period of in the phase of the market when the market goes nowhere. It goes up by a couple of percentage points, goes down by percentage points, remains there for a long period of time, and that is the very frustrating period. The real advantage comes for SIP when the market crumbles, and that is generally the starting point, and that is generally the point when investors get excited about investments. Every time investors get easily excited about investments, that is generally the time after which the markets take fall or crumble or fall sharply. And whenever market fall is always sharper than the kind of rise that we see. Rise is always steadier than the big fall which we see in a brief period of time. So as a result of it, SIP has its value, even if you are doing your investment for a medium term. But why we wanted to do this long term exercise is that SIP should be a habit. Investors should be making it a habit for their lifetime, for the phase of their life in which they will be earning, because that is the only time when you will have surpluses, and that is the only time when you should be saving for the future consumption. That is the time, and it should be a gradual thing, and that in itself reduces the risk. But what about the possibility of long term investment not working to your advantage? what is the possibility of long-term disaster? You do your investment with great discipline, and the likelihood of not things not working out very nicely. So the good news is that it works out nicely. If you are a long-term investor, the longer the SIP period, the lower the chances of incurring a loss. You know, look at this. A 1-year SIP subjected an investor to a loss of only 20, a 1-year SIP, which means you should not be doing your SIP just for 1 year and then taking your money out. But even a 1-year SIP subjected an investor to a loss of 22.5% of cases, and a 5-year SIP reduced this percentage of 22.5%, reduced it to 3.3%. And if you did your SIP for 10 years, it got reduced to 0.3%, which means you are virtually able to eliminate the possibility of losing money if you stretch your SIP for 10 years. Of course, it's not an easy thing. It requires discipline. It requires forgetting about it and remaining focused on your investment, because in any 10-year time period, you will have phase of exuberance and fear. So sticking to 10-year time frame. So this is the basic outcome. A 10-year time frame eliminates the possibility of losing money, virtually eliminates the possibility of losing money with an SIP. The longer the SIP period, the higher the chances of double-digit return, which I think is quite interesting, because increasingly this double-digit return is also a moving target. Double-digit return simply means that it's decent, or fancier return or higher return than fixed income. But important thing is that substantially higher return can be achieved if you elongate your period. A 1-year SIP had over 55% chance of earning more than 10%, while in a 10-year SIP, the probability improves to 77%, which I think is quite, doing your SIP for 10 years and earning more than 10%. If the probability is 77%, it's quite a, 3/4 of a possibility that you'll be earning that return. And this is taking into account the full market cycle of 3/4 kind, because this is for the period 92 to 2007, 1992 to 2017. So during this period, there have been worst of times. So we are also taking into account the worst phase of the market. You bought it at the market high, sold it at the worst of the market in any 10-year period. So this will be the situation. What if you start off at wrong time when the markets are at your peak? You are very likely to incur losses in the first couple of years, but just stretch your SIP period to 4 years and you get back to green, which means that this is a question which many investors are asking nowadays, that the market is overheated, should he start his SIP? Assuming that you start your SIP in the past 25 years, if you would have invested at the worst of times, got started from there on, and did your SIP for next 4 years, you always made money. So 4-year SIP, and the state of the market doesn't matter. Of course, all my study, all these observations, they have a catch. Making money or not making money is a psychological thing. If you don't make any loss over a 4-year period, you have actually lost, because there is an opportunity loss. Your money did not go. But I'm primarily talking in terms of arithmetic absolute terms, that there is an opportunity loss, but the pain is not as much, because psychologically we are very comfortable with not losing money. For a short investment time horizon of 1 or 2 year, even SIP can't save you from losses. But you can make reasonable return by persisting for 5 years and more, which means that 4-year time period you always broke even, and 5-year time period always made you reasonable return. The opportunity loss also disappeared, which means 5-year SIP, you are okay, you are home. And even taking into account that you are beginning to invest at the worst of times, you are not necessarily picking the finest of fund. Still then you make money on a 5-year SIP. But all this is based on the universe of the good, bad, and the ugly funds available to Indian investors in the past. Your performance can be substantially improved of doing better with superior funds which have a superior track record and a methodical process and a a set of people who are managing funds more diligently, because this study is based on the universe of funds which are available to, or investment options available to Indian investors in the last 25 years. I would say that you can enhance your performance substantially by taking guidance from our ratings and using your own judgment and the guidance that you get at Value Research Online. Uh, and the choice matters. Persisting with poor performers entails a huge opportunity cost. Over the 10-year period, the bottom performer delivers less than half of what the top performing fund returns. So, if you persist with your losers, then you will earn half as much. You will be okay, you will be well off, but you will not be that well off. You will be half as well off as the superior performing fund. So, uh, so keep coming to Value Research Online often. Do your investments, review it carefully. Monitor the performance. Don't do it every day, but do it every now and then. Do it every 6-7 months or a year or 2 year, so that you are not persisting with your poor performance. Because when you are doing the hard work, when you have done the hard work primarily by earning that money and saving it, make it work harder, and then enhance the performance by doing little bit extra. That little bit extra will not require serious effort. So I wish you very best. uh, the lessons are very straightforward. You have to do SIP. You have to do SIP for the long term, and to enhance the return further, there is one thing which has not been captured in this study, is that when you are when you are doing your SIP for the long term, try and revise your amount, because most investors think of SIP in a constant term, that you have to do 5,000 rupee. All the tools that you see on the website is that if you invest 5,000 rupee for next 25 years, how much it will be worth. The real life is little different. If you are able to save 5,000 rupees today, 5,000 rupees a month today, you should be able to save 6,000 rupees next year. And you should be, if not next year, 5,500 rupees next year if your salary goes up by 10%. Likewise, so try and revise your SIP amount every year with your rising income, and you will be substantially better off, because the return which you will get is entirely dependent on the amount that you invest. So more you invest, and gradually the power of compounding and the ability to save more over a period of time will also be one of the crucial determinants, will be a crucial factor. So do SIP, increase your SIP amount everywhere, every time your income rises. Choose good funds and keep coming back to Value Research Online to monitor their performance, to make sure that you are always invested in good funds. So now I take your questions on this.
Thank you, Dhiren.
Thank you.
Our first question relates to the point you made about the difference between underperformers and overperformers. Anirban says that if a fund underperforms its benchmark for about a year to year and a half, should he stop his SIP in it?
Depends. If somebody is, I would actually, I have been forced to think about this question in the past. It entirely depends on the history of the fund manager. If, and recently, last couple of years, there has been a situation. It depends on how experienced or how old the fund manager has been at work. If there is a fund manager with 20-year experience, and he has generally been right in the last 20 years, and in last 2 years he looks awful, he looks bad, I will be giving him more time. But if I know a fund manager has delivered only over the past 5 years in a certain phase of the market, and is struggling in the next phase of the market, which is different, because there are fund managers who do very well in the rising market, and they struggle horribly in a struggling market. And there are other kind of fund managers. There are fund managers who struggle in the rising market, and they are able to make up with their conservative stance in a market which is not doing well. And there are fund managers who do reasonably okay in both the markets, and overall they do well. So broadly, based on the cyclicality of the market and the attitude of the fund manager, we can broadly classify fund managers into one of the three. I will give less time to a fund manager with a limited history. I might give a longer time frame. If I come across a fund manager with 10-year, 15-year experience, has been able to deliver relatively superior performance, I will give him 2-3 years time. A manager whom I have known just for 5 years, I will be getting impatient after a year.
Next up, Mr. Dash asks if SIPs is a good investment strategy even after retirement.
Uh, it depends. SIP basically, it's just what Birla Sun Life says, that it is a सबसे important plan for the accumulation phase. But if post retirement you are still left with savings based on your income, then why not? But post retirement, if you are thinking in terms of doing your SIP with your accumulation or superannuation benefit that you may have derived, so it entirely depends. If you are able to save money even post retirement, then why not? You will leave a larger state for your successors.
This next question comes from Dhruv, who currently lives in India but has some dollars in a current account with a US bank. So he wants to know, should he invest a part of them in a low cost index fund in the US or convert them to rupees and invest them in a good mutual fund in India?
It entirely depends, and money is fungible today. If he decides to, get back to US and he takes his money here, he brings his money here, it doesn't matter. I would say that, somebody who is conversant with the US and the US market, I would I would think that, somebody, or even Indian investors should be investing a small part of their money in the US market, and particularly in the technology led market, because I think that the world is changing. What Warren Buffett said in his recent annual general meeting is that the investing world has changed, and he is trying to understand what has changed, because 4 out of the 10 largest companies in the US, they do not require any capital, and they are only generating money. They are technology led companies, the Microsoft, the Facebook, the Google, and the Apple. And so and these are companies which are not accessible to Indian investors. I would say that diversifying a part of your money into a set of companies which are completely uncorrelated. Also, I feel that these are global companies, though they are domiciled in the US. So look at that. International diversification of a certain kind might be useful for investors, and and they are also growth investment. They are growth investments of a very unusual kind. So consider that.
Next up, Davinder asks if the SIP date matters, such as at the start, middle, or end of the month.
No, it doesn't matter. It matters to the extent that you should be averaging at a defined periodicity. It enforces discipline, but it is entirely a matter of chance that and if you are able to average it meaningfully, and it doesn't really matter whether you do it on 1st or 10th or 15th, or maybe a large sum of money, maybe you are averaging it on a weekly basis, that is also good enough. But will it really enhance the performance, your performance based on selection of a specific date? It's entirely a matter of chance, and the difference will not be meaningful.
On a related note, Dhiren, Debashish asks if it's a better strategy to manually invest every month, regularly but not on a fixed date, rather than through an automated SIP on a fixed date.
Uh, that is the whole idea, that be disciplined, be structured, and make it independent of you, so that it is programmed. So I don't see any value, and I think this is exactly the point which SIP is able to deal with, that it is able to eliminate the emotion of being selective with your days. Because what happens, think of it, next week the market goes down by 4% on two specific days. What will you do? Will you wait for the market to will you have the courage to invest after the first day, and will you have the same conviction on the second day? And there are such occasions. In 2008 we saw many such occasions. There were many days on which the market went down by 5% in a single session. So and there has similar situation on the upside too. So you will start regretting. You will pause. You will hold. That is the whole idea of automated investment plan. Eliminate the anxiety and indiscipline of human mind, which is generally caused by our sensitivity to huge the market noise.
Devki says that a son invests in SIPs through his demat account for which he gets charged a fixed amount per SIP per month. What can he do about these charges?
One is that he should stop making his investment through the demat account. You don't need a demat account, and if you're making, if it is possible to invest in the direct plan on of almost any tax saving fund of any company, and you don't necessarily need a demat account for holding your mutual fund. So stop this altogether, and if this is the only investment that you are making, choose your tax saving fund, get started, and move your money from your demat account to account statement and stop that altogether. And definitely one should not be paying for a demat account for holding your mutual funds in it, which is not necessary and mandatory.
Moving on, Himanshu asks what is the difference between rank and rating of a fund? He says a 5-star fund isn't necessarily rated ranked 1.
No, rating and ranking are completely two different things. One is that both are dependent on numbers. Ranking can be different for different time period. You get a 1 month rank, you get a 1 year rank, you get a 5 year rank, and you get a 10 year rank. So there are different time periods for which you basically compare, or you list the fund in the descending order of their performance on a certain time period. You see how many number of funds, and that is why you see 1 out of 31, 2 out of 31 over a given time period. That is ranking. And ranking can change every day, because every day the returns are calculated and you go back to 1 year, 5 year, 3 year, or different time period, and so the rankings can change. Rating is a slightly more nuanced thing. Rating is based on 3 year, 5 year, and 10 year performance of a fund on a risk adjusted basis. So there is a possibility that a fund has done very well, has generated decent return, assuming that there are two funds, one which has given you a 20% return annualized over the last 5 years. There is another fund which has given exactly the same kind of return, 20% annualized return over the last 5 years. But one fund actually falls more often in its journey to generate this return. The other fund does it with great stability. There is a possibility that the fund which shows great propensity to fall often, has generated a lot of negative return to generate this 20% return, might become a 1-star fund, and the one which has provided this return with great stability might be a 5-star fund. You might say that the return over the last 5 years is just the same, why the ratings are so different. Funds get penalized for you know being more volatile on the negative side, not on the upside, because that is how investors approach it. But both are based on qualitative thing, and so the rating does not change that often. Of course, rating and return both are based on a set of fund in their respective categories. So you cannot really, they are not inter-category comparison. When we are talking of liquid fund, we are talking of liquid funds only. When we are talking of large cap fund, we are talking of only funds which invest in large cap stocks. So the large cap stocks, the ranking or the rating is not comparable with the tax saving or the mid cap or the small cap, where the dynamics could be different. So they are all within their categories. Rating gets revised every month. Uh, of course, the ranking and return is calculated on every business day on which the NAV is calculated.
Moving on, Sanjeev asks if you could explain the taxation of SIPs.
Oh, taxation of SIP is fairly straightforward. I'm assuming I'm going to explain only the taxation of equity and equity related fund SIP tax treatment, because that is the kind of fund in which we should do SIP. You don't need to necessarily do SIP in fixed income fund unless unless you are actually saving every month and you want to do a very short term investment. You want to do a recurring deposit for next 1 year. You can well do it in a debt fund. But otherwise, if you have lump sum money, which I also suggest that if you have to make your long term investment lump sum money into a mutual fund, it should be by way of SIP in an equity fund, but that may not be necessarily in case of debt fund. So I'm just explaining the equity part of it. If you keep doing SIP, all the investments that were made in the last 12 months are only subject to tax on the gains that you will get on them. All the funds which get older than 12 months, they all become completely tax free. The securities transaction tax will be deducted when you redeem that money. So all the funds which are, all the SIP installment which are more than 365 day old become completely tax free. The investments made in the last 12 months or 365 days are subject to, gains on them is subject to short term capital gains tax. So that is all there to it. If you redeem all your investments which were made more than, which were made a year and more longer, you are not liable to any tax. And with the remaining investment, if you hold on and if you start redeeming that money every month for the next 11 months, all your gains can be completely tax free except for, and there is a nominal deduction of securities transaction tax.
This next one is from Mr. Datta. He asks if there is any way for an investor to determine the appropriateness of a benchmark for a fund.
Uh, there are different benchmark, and benchmark is an afterthought because we had the whole mutual fund industry which came up, and then the regulator made it mandatory that every fund should also have a benchmark. So a lot of benchmarks got created because there were funds for which could not find a appropriate benchmark. So I would say that the benchmark should be an investor's mind. One is that the basic benchmark that it should beat inflation. That is the whole effort of making an investment. And the only funds where we can give allowance for not beating inflation for superior liquidity or safety are the liquid funds and the ultra short term bond fund. I really don't care if they don't provide the liquid, if they don't beat inflation. Then comes, I would think that my effort of investing in equity is that it should be able to beat a very broad benchmark. So Sensex or Nifty is a good enough benchmark for equity returns. Then comes, but how do you do with it? How do you do this comparison based on your SIP investment? Because on a specific time period, you can say that, okay, this fund did well over the last 1 year or over 3 years. But what happens? Because you have a real choice. Whenever you are investing in an actively managed fund, assuming that you are going to invest in a multi-cap fund, and you are going to do a SIP of 5,000 rupee, and you are going to do that 5,000 rupee SIP over the next 3 years. How do you compare? How do you compare that performance based on the 3-year SIP in the Nifty ETF or the Nifty index fund, which is also a available choice, available option? So I would say that these things you can try it out at Value Research Online. You will get a more realistic benchmark. I think keep in mind 3-4 things which are, I think, human benchmarks. One is that I should be able to beat inflation. I should be able to beat a broad index fund, and I should be able to get a adequate compensation for if I'm actually choosing a more volatile vehicle. So, and my worst case scenario when it comes to looking at a fixed income return, I would say that State Bank of India's 45-day term deposit is my benchmark, because for a fixed income, because that is something which I think is available to every Indian in the country, and you can just walk into a bank branch in the neighborhood, do a 45-day deposit, and this comes with virtually no risk, or at least perceived no risk. Theoretically there might be. So this is the kind of return which is available to everybody. So for fixed income, I would say 45-day term for short term 45-day term deposit, Sensex or Nifty, and that's about it. And you try out your own SIP corresponding investment at Value Research Online to do a more realistic benchmark comparison.
This next one is from Mr. Bhargav. He asks how to understand which sector will perform better than others over different time periods.
Uh, don't try to figure out. In the last 25 years, I have tried to find fund managers who are able to figure it out. Broadly, they are able to figure it out that over the next couple of years this sector will do well. But many a times I come across that they are awful in their timing. Some of the finest fund managers have been calling it wrong on the infrastructure sector, likely superior performance over the past 4 years. So it turns out that the professionals get it wrong, and that is why you should choose a good actively managed fund, and it should be diversified, and none of the sectors, because and that is actually the charm of the whole thing, the diversification. This diversification in the non-performing sectors in the worst of times is something which also performs, because most turnaround in the market happens when you least expect it. When you have given up on a sector, it starts moving up, and when you actually get very excited and completely confident about a performance of a sector, it crumbles. We see it time and again. That is the nature of this market, that is the nature of this beast. Don't try to do that. That is why choose a good fund, and he will make sure that he's there in the worst performing sectors as well in a limited way, and he's riding the well performing ones too.
We'll take one last question for
Sure.
today's session, Dhiren. Mr. Vadia says that if he wants to compare funds using only returns, what time frame is the best one? 1 year, 5 years, or 10 years?
Depends, and I think you should take a combination of it. But I would say if I have to really evaluate a fund based on how well it has done, I would actually take two time period. One is how it has done. So I will go to Value Research Online, try and look at the Sensex return, and try and pick a up cycle and try and pick a down cycle. And it may not be 1 year, 3 year, 5 year. There is a possibility that last up cycle is lingering for nearly 1.5 year. So I will take the performance in this, because the real test of a fund is that how it has done in a falling market, in a steadily falling market, and how it has done in a steadily rising market, and overall. So whatever time period the fund sees, and I would like to look at the complexion of the performance in both the phase of the market. If a fund falls little less than the others in a falling market and rises little more than others in a rising market, that I think will be the dream fund, and it's not very hard to find that out.
Thank you, Dhiren.
Thank you.
Any closing remarks?
Yes, get started with your सबसे important plan, the SIP. A lot of Indians are actually beginning to do that. 1.35 crore at the last count. But don't think in terms of some magic over a certain time period or something to be done over the next 1 year, or it's a fashionable thing to do, or it's a popular thing to do. Make it a habit. Do it for the long term, and I think I really look forward to your compliments 10 years from now, 15 years from now.
Thank you, Dhiren.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining in. We look forward to your presence next week as well.